Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. "100 episodes. We love the sound of it. Seems like yesterday when we started the Vantage journey with all of you. Today we complete 100 episodes of this show and we have some spectacular numbers to share with you. Thanks to you. So let me start by saying thank you to all of you who watch the show. We hope you enjoy watching it as much as we enjoy creating it for you. Tonight we're telling you about a drone deal between India and America. It's not a done deal yet, but Washington is pushing for it. In Pakistan, a new budget with old problems is out. The IMF is not impressed. And a bailout that Pakistan urgently needs may not come. In India, the government has pulled up e-commerce giants. They're duping consumers in more ways than one. We'll tell you how. In Russia, Vladimir Putin says he lost more than 50 tanks in a week. But Ukraine, he says, is still losing the war. We'll bring you more on the claims and the counterclaims. In China, people refuse to get married and the government is worried. And the world over, young people are going under the knife and posting about it on social media. We discuss the journey of plastic surgery and what is influencing the influencers. The headlines first. Turkey digs in its heels over Sweden's NATO membership. Turkish President Erdogan plays down hopes, saying, and I quote, "While Sweden has expectations, Turkey doesn't have to comply with them." There is growing pressure on Ankara to ratify Sweden's bid before the NATO meet in July. Violence flares up in India's northeastern state of Manipur yet again. At least 9 people killed in a late-night attack in Khamen-Lok, which has been the main battleground for the Kuki tribals and the non-tribal Métis. Britain's health crisis worsens. Doctors begin a new 72-hour strike over pay. This is the latest in the state-funded National Health Service. A similar walkout in April led to 196,000 appointments and operations being rescheduled. Lebanon's parliament fails to elect a new president yet again. This was their 12th attempt. The deadlock continues due to divisions between Iran-backed Hezbollah and its opponents. Crisis at Lebanon has been without a head of state for over 7 months now. And South Korea says North Korea faked its popular website Naver to steal data. It is one of South Korea's biggest tech companies and its largest internet portal. It includes features such as Google-like maps and financial services similar to Apple Pay. The nature of warfare is changing and the world is learning how in the battlefields of Ukraine. Yes, there are troops involved, but they're not the ones causing maximum damage. Drones are. Russia is using Iranian drones to strike Kiev. Ukraine is said to have launched attacks deep inside Russia using drones. In Moscow, on the Kremlin. In all these cases, drones were involved. They're being used at sea too. Let me show you how. These are naval drones. Ukraine used them to strike Russian ships. And the world is watching all of this. Drones may be the future of war. More and more countries are adding them to their arsenal, including India. Drones, in fact, are on India's defense shopping list, and one compelling seller is making a hard pitch. The United States of America. They want to sell drones to India, and they want to secure a deal as early as next week. That's when Prime Minister Modi will be on a state visit to the US. Washington is working on a weapons deal, and this is what it wants to sell India. The MQ-9B SeaGuardian drone. It's made by an American company called General Atomics. And India knows this drone well. In the past, New Delhi has leased some of these machines. The Indian Navy uses this drone for intelligence gathering. And now they're being asked to buy it. The proposal is to sell India dozens of drones. They haven't finalized the exact number yet, not that we know of. But one report says India could buy as many as 30 drones if the deal goes through. And what's the total value of the deal? $2 to $3 billion. Washington is pushing hard for it. Reports say the US wants India to cut through the red tape and seal the deal. And since India already leases the drone, there is no question about testing or debating its utility. The SeaGuardian is a surveillance drone. The Indian Navy uses it to monitor the Indian Ocean region. The drone can fly for 30 hours and fly as far as 5,000 nautical miles. It operates at a height of 40,000 feet. It has also been used in the standoff with China. In the year 2020, when China deployed the PLA near Indian borders, the SeaGuardian drone was used in the Himalayas for surveillance to track the build-up on the Chinese side. And not just India, its Quad partners also use this drone. The US, of course, uses it, considering it's an American-made machine. But so do armies of Australia and Japan in some form or the other. So it makes sense for India to acquire this drone. Then what's the holdup? The cost. It's steep. Remember, this is not a new proposal from the US. The Trump administration made it too. They tried to sell the very same drone to India. They almost had a deal, 22 drones for $2 to $3 billion, which is very similar to what's being discussed right now. But it did not materialize. And a big reason for that was the cost. Some officials in India objected to the price tag, and ultimately they decided to lease it instead of buying it. So will this time be different? Is India now prepared to buy the same machines? It's hard to say at the moment. Also, cost is not the only consideration for India. Remember, the government is pushing for Make in India. Even in the deals it signs with foreign players, there is a Make in India component, and that applies here too. Reports say India wants some parts of this drone to be manufactured here, and that is still being discussed. We'll get more clarity once Prime Minister Modi meets President Biden next week, but these negotiations do reflect a larger trend, a shift in India's approach in defense procurements. There is a clear focus on diversification. It is reducing its dependence on Russian arms. Earlier, 69% of India's arms came from Russia. Now this number has fallen to below 50%. India is buying defense equipment from multiple players now: France, America, Israel. And deals from these countries have been on the rise. Let me show you more numbers, in fact. Defense procurements from the US have grown by more than 500%. From France, almost 500%. And from Israel, the growth has been 175%. So Russia might still be the number one player, but its dominance in the Indian market is shrinking. And from India's perspective, it's a good trend. It's always a good strategy to not keep all your eggs in one basket. Plus, Russia's resources are stretched. It is fighting a war that may not be over anytime soon. Its defense deliveries are being delayed. For instance, the delivery of the S-400 missile defense system to India. It's running late. The US senses an opportunity here. It believes it can seize the moment and enable India's pivot away from Russian arms. But for India too, this is an opportunity to play its cards right. As the biggest weapons importer in the world, India should play this game on its own terms, settle for nothing but the best, and make no compromises on the Make in India policy. In Pakistan, it's budget season, but there's a catch. Usually, budgets are supposed to impress the citizens. In Pakistan, that's not the case. Their budget was meant to impress the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And did it? Well, most experts say no, it did not. Let me get you up to speed. Pakistan is facing a major balance of payments crisis. It means they don't have enough foreign exchange, barely enough to cover 1 month of imports. And I've been saying this for months now, so you can imagine for how long Pakistan has been in this mode, barely scraping through, getting only enough money to survive month on month. It is on the edge. It is seeking help from the IMF. In 2019, they struck a $6.5 billion bailout deal. So the IMF was supposed to give Pakistan $6.5 billion. Out of this, $2.5 billion is still left. Pakistan wants this money urgently. And that deal expires at the end of June, at the end of this month. So if the IMF does not agree to give that money in the next 15 days, there will be trouble for Pakistan. It could run out of forex. How does the budget figure in this discussion, though? You see, the IMF is a strict lender. They will give you money, but they also set big conditions. They want more reforms, less subsidies, lower deficits. That's what the IMF wants. And that's where the budget in Pakistan, or anywhere for that matter, plays an important role. If the budget is reformist, the IMF is happy. In the case of Pakistan, they don't seem to be. Let's look at the numbers. Pakistan's total spending will be around $50 billion, which is more than last year. So they're spending more. But budgets are not really about spending more. They're also about how you're spending that money. In the case of Pakistan, around $6 billion is allocated to defense. That's around 13% of the spending for defense. Around $25 billion will be set aside for debt servicing. That's loan repayment and interests. Now, do you see the problem here? Around 63% of the spending is on military and debt. It's not ideal when you're hoping to please the International Monetary Fund. Another number to note is the budget deficit. What's that? Deficit is the difference between revenue and expenditure. If you spend more than you earn, then you are in deficit. For instance, if you earn $10, but you spend 12, then your deficit is 2. It's simple subtraction. Pakistan is aiming for a deficit of 6.54%. And to give you some context, their current deficit is 7%, so they're aiming for slightly less, but probably not enough for the IMF. They're looking for some structural reforms in the budget. Instead, this is what they got: more subsidies, more development projects, and even more wages. Civil servants in Pakistan will get a 35% hike. State pensions will be 17% higher. And don't get me wrong, people being paid more is not a bad thing. In fact, it should be encouraged. But Pakistan is paying people with money it doesn't even have. Their priority should be long-term. Just think back to India's budget in 1991. It was a bitter pill back then. But look at the returns over the next 30 years. India is now the 5th largest economy in the world, so it's all about trusting the process, about the political will to trust the process. Pakistan, unfortunately, does not have that. The IMF has around 15 days to take a decision, and we are talking about a complicated process here. They have to circulate documents, they have to consult shareholders, take political inputs. Can all of this be done in 15 days? Officials in the IMF are not so confident. They're looking not just as this latest bailout, but also the long term, because Pakistan will need more programs. They will need more bailouts in the future. Their traditional lenders, like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are shaky. So the IMF is really their best bet. But lenders want to see political stability. Pakistan doesn't even have that. In 60 days from now, the Shehbaz Sharif government will complete its tenure. After that, there will be an interim government. What about elections? Well, they may happen in November, or before that, or not happen at all. In Pakistan, you cannot be sure. And this is why the International Monetary Fund is worried. The recent clash between Imran Khan and the army does not inspire confidence. In this instance, the army has nearly won, but it also shows how precarious the civilian institutions are. So let me sum up the situation for you. The budget has no reforms. The election may or may not happen. The army is getting more money, and the IMF is far from convinced. So will Pakistan still get a bailout? We'll keep you posted. Most of us shop online. Our online carts are getting bigger by the day. But did you voluntarily pick those items you bought? Or were you tricked into it? And don't be confused, most of us don't recognize these tricks. They're called dark patterns. They trick you into buying things or subscribing to a service. Most online retailers do it, but now the government of India is on to them. The Consumer Affairs Ministry of India has met major e-commerce giants. All the bigwigs were in attendance, like Flipkart, Zomato, Amazon, Big Basket. The government says consumers should not be tricked. They say consent by deceit is not consent. So what's the plan of action? We'll get to that, but first, let's understand these dark patterns. How do they work? Well, they come in different forms, like disguised advertisements, forced continuity, or bait and switch. Different tactics, but the same objective: to trick you into clicking buy. Since I mentioned 3 types, I'll explain them. First, disguised advertisements. What are they? Take a look at this website. It's a download link from a Mac software. But how many download buttons do you see? 3. Only one is the real download button. The rest are fake. If you click them, you're forwarded to another website. This is false advertising. It's an ad masquerading as a download link. Next, we come to forced continuity. What is that? Assume that you've used your credit card for a streaming service. It was supposed to be a trial. You paid money through your card. But the next month, you get charged again. Why? Because the service has an auto-renewal policy. You did not see it. It was probably buried deep inside their terms and conditions. That is forced continuity. And finally, bait and switch. All of us have seen those golden offers or sales. A tablet for $100. It's a pretty good deal, right? But you click on it and the product is out of stock. Instead, the website offers you other products, other similar products, like another tablet for $105 or $110 or more. Do you see what just happened? You got baited with a $100 offer, but once inside, the seller switched with a more expensive one. Hence, bait and switch. Now think back to all those purchases you made online, gadgets, home appliances, clothes, whatever you bought. Do you think you were tricked? Chances are at least some of you were, and these are just some of the dark patterns at play. There are dozens more of them, like phishing emails. Take a look at this one. It says your password expires in 24 hours. Click below to set a new password. Spoiler alert, there is no password. If you click on it, you get redirected to a website. Sometimes these emails will also have a timer just to nudge you along. All of these tactics are illegal and deceitful, which is why the government is cracking down on them. They've asked online retailers to impose ethical guidelines, also to carry out independent audits. The objective is to weed out such strategies, but consumers will also have to be educated about what's happening here. Most people cannot identify these dark patterns. So in their mind, it's not cheating. But every now and then, the online platforms get called out, and you can thank social media for that. Let me show you this incident from last year. A man from Mumbai did an apple-to-apple comparison. He bought the same stuff from the same restaurant. The first time he bought offline, the second time through a food delivery app. Now look at the difference. The offline bill was 512 rupees. The online bill for the same product was 690 after applying discounts. That's almost 34% more. What explains this difference? In one word, commissions. Most delivery apps charge up to 30% commission for generating business. But the restaurants try to avoid that. How do they do it? By increasing the overall price. They put the commissions burden on us, the consumer. And don't forget the other charges that almost always apply, like packaging or extra distance. So put together, you end up paying a lot more. What's the solution here then? One is more regulation. The other is leveling the playing field. Let me introduce you to ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce. It's a government-backed online retail network. You can find all kinds of sellers on it. Restaurants, grocery stores, gadget hubs, even fashion. ONDC, by the way, is doing quite well. It clocked around 30,000 orders last weekend, 30,000 over the weekend, and most of it was food and beverage. More and more consumers are switching to ONDC. And why is that? Because things are cheaper here. At first, this was because of massive discounts. But on the 1st of June, ONDC reduced those incentives. Now you get 3 discounts per day. Even then, the orders are zooming. What does that tell you? A, maybe there is more trust in a government platform. And B, it is still cheaper. That's a strong message for all those e-commerce giants. India's digital consumer market is worth $500 billion. It was $500 billion in 2020. By 2030, it could hit $1 trillion. Those consumers want the best deals. They don't want dark patterns or hidden charges. Talking about being duped, China wants to mediate between Israel and Palestine. They've rolled out the red carpet for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. He's in China for 3 days. On Tuesday, the foreign ministers met. China's Qin Gang promised to support Israel-Palestine talks. He offered Chinese wisdom. Wonder what that means. Maybe incursions into your neighboring country or piracy on the high seas, because China will have a lot of wisdom on both of these. But on peace, I don't think so. This visit is less about peace and more about grandstanding. Xi Jinping wants an image makeover, and what better issue than Palestine? The project started last year. President Xi met with Abbas in Saudi Arabia. He promised to help with a 2-state solution. Then in April, China's foreign minister got on the job. He dialed his Israeli and Palestinian counterparts. His message: we are ready to help with negotiations. Abbas's visit is the final piece of that project. China can officially claim to be a peace broker now. The question is, can they make an impact? Well, China has historically had good ties with Palestine. They recognized the state in 1988. Both Mahmoud Abbas and his predecessor, Yasser Arafat, have made official trips to Beijing. In fact, this is Abbas's 5th trip to China. Their peace plan is based on the 2-state solution. The borders will return to 1967, and East Jerusalem will be Palestine's capital. China says it wants to resolve this issue at an early date. Listen to this.
President Xi Jinping stressed the need to firmly promote a political settlement of the Palestinian question on the basis of the two-state solution and to strengthen international efforts for a peaceful settlement. As a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, China will continue working hard with the international community for a comprehensive, just, and lasting settlement of the Palestinian question at an early date.
Nothing radical there, but the Palestine issue is not just about the plan, it's also about implementation. It's about getting both Israel and Palestine to agree to the plan, and for that you need leverage. Does China have that leverage over Israel? At this point, it's hard to imagine. They've signed a 25-year deal with Israel's biggest enemy, Iran. They're also locked in a conflict with Israel's biggest supporter, the US. So the question doesn't quite make sense. The equation doesn't make sense, rather. Then what is China's endgame here? One objective is the image makeover. Xi Jinping seems to be fed up with the wolf warrior image. He wants to be a statesman now, a man of peace. He's already brokered a normalization deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, so naturally Palestine was next. But this vanity project can give indirect gains. For example, more support in the Arab world. You see, young Arabs may not care very much. But among the Arab elite, Palestine is an emotional issue. You support Palestine and you get their support. And that's what Xi Jinping is doing here. He's expected to approve 4 infrastructure projects in the West Bank. He's positioning himself as Palestine's best bet. And if he fails, well, no one will be surprised, will they? Low expectations equal low risk. Xi loses nothing if this policy backfires or if it doesn't work. But he gains a lot by just attempting it. The world should recognize this design. You can't infiltrate your neighbor and preach peace elsewhere. You can't launder your belligerence with peace deals. But that's what China is doing. It is using the realignment in West Asia to gain a foothold there, to displace the United States. And what is Washington doing about it? Well, there's very little they can do at this point. Most Arab countries are moving away from the US as it is. They're exploring ties with Russia and China. Remember the leverage I mentioned. Even America is running out of it. They used Iran to rally Arab countries behind them, but now Saudi Arabia and Iran are mending fences. So Joe Biden's Palestine pitch is a weak one. He wants more diplomatic recognition for Israel. At the same time, he wants to advocate for Palestine. Many would say that's contradictory. Listen to his Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, describing that balancing act.
Integration and normalization efforts are not a substitute for progress between Israelis and Palestinians, nor should they come at its expense. Israel's deepened relationships with its partners can and should advance the well-being of the Palestinian people and the prospects for a two-state solution.
That statement is filled with idealism. It's a scarce commodity in geopolitics. It's also a strategy that seldom works. You know, there's one more peace deal that Xi Jinping attempted. The one between Russia and Ukraine. It was a 12-point peace plan, but it found 0 takers, sank without a trace. Meanwhile, the war is intensifying, both with missiles and words. Both sides are reporting exaggerated gains, and both sides are padding up the enemy's losses, which is nothing new for either Putin or Zelensky. So take their statements with more than a pinch of salt. Having said that, Vladimir Putin addressed the press yesterday. He said that Russia had lost 54 tanks in a week, which is a rare admission of losses. Guess what he said next? He said Ukraine had lost 160 tanks and that Ukraine's counteroffensive was not going well. Our next report examines the claims and counterclaims.
Who is winning the war? Not Ukraine, if you ask the Russian president. He says their counteroffensive is a disaster.
Their losses are approaching a level that could be described as catastrophic. If we take irretrievable losses, it is clear that the defending side suffers fewer losses, but still this ratio of 1 to 10, as they say, is in our favor. We have 10 times less than the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine.
Putin was addressing the press on Tuesday. He said Russia has 10 times less losses than Ukraine. But in absolute numbers, he admitted Russia is faring worse.
They lost over 160 tanks and over 360 armored vehicles of various types during this time. According to my calculations, it is 25 to 30% of the equipment that has been supplied to Ukraine from abroad. There are not only, as I said, over 160 tanks and 360 infantry fighting vehicles. This is not all NATO equipment. Soviet-made armored vehicles are also being destroyed there, but both Bradleys and the Leopards are burning really well. As for our losses, let the Defense Ministry speak on other data, on personal losses. But as for the tanks, as I've said, they have lost over 160, we have lost 54. Some of them can be restored and repaired.
So Putin says Ukraine has lost over 500 vehicles. About a quarter of these are Western supplies. Some Leopard tanks and Bradley armored fighting vehicles have been destroyed. And Russia has lost about 54 tanks. There's of course no way to verify the exact figures. Ukraine and the West will dispute Russia's version.
Thanks to everyone who is fighting, who protects and advances our positions. For example, the Bakhmut sector. It is, in particular, the soldiers of the 80th Separate Brigade of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces. There is forward movement in various areas. I thank you. Thank you for your extraordinary bravery.
That was Zelensky during his address on Tuesday. At the same time, the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg was in the US.
And the support that we are providing together to Ukraine is now making a difference on the battlefield as we speak. Because the offensive is launched and Ukrainians are making progress, making advances. It's still early days, but what we do know is that the more land the Ukrainians are able to liberate, the stronger hand they will have at the negotiating table.
He said the weapons NATO has provided are making a difference, and Putin agrees. He says that the war will end and talks will begin if the West stops giving Ukraine weapons. He says that if the weapon supplies stop, Ukraine will be forced to rush to the negotiating table. But it seems the West isn't ready for that just yet. They believe Ukraine needs to liberate more land to gain more bargaining power.
Also today, the department announced additional security assistance to meet Ukraine's critical security and defense needs. This is the Biden administration's 40th presidential drawdown of equipment from DoD inventories for Ukraine since August 2021. It includes key capabilities to aid Ukraine's efforts to retake its sovereign territory as they bravely protect Ukraine's soldiers, civilians, and critical infrastructure.
Yes, the US is giving Ukraine another military aid package. This one will reportedly be worth $325 million. Does that mean that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is actually going poorly? Was Putin really telling the truth? Most likely, both sides have things to hide, and the battlefield will reveal more than the politicians choose to say.
Our next story is about games, the kind you play on your console or mobile phone. If you have an Xbox, Call of Duty or World of Warcraft will be part of your daily routine. If you're a mobile gamer, you're probably hooked to Candy Crush. If you play all these games, then this story is for you and you don't want to miss it. Because the future of your favorite games is being decided as we speak. Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Candy Crush, these are some of the most popular games in the world. They're also made by the same company. It's called Activision Blizzard. This is an American video game company and it's being sold. To whom? Microsoft, a tech giant, also the maker of Xbox. Microsoft is ready to pay $69 billion for this takeover. This is the biggest deal in the gaming industry. Experts are calling it a marriage made in heaven. Activision makes some of the most popular games in the world and Microsoft builds Xbox. It's one of the two gaming consoles in existence. The other one is Sony's PlayStation. So for Microsoft, buying Activision makes a lot of sense. It's a classic case of consolidation. Gamers play on Xbox. Why not buy the studio that makes some of the biggest games in the world? But American regulators do not like this idea and they want to block this deal. They have gone to court for it, in fact. The US Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, has filed a case. What is the FTC? It's a regulator that enforces America's antitrust laws. It ensures that monopolies are not created and that the market remains fair for everyone. Now, the FTC thinks that if the Activision deal is allowed, if Activision is sold, then Microsoft will have a monopoly in gaming. They say the deal will, quote unquote, substantially lessen competition in this sector, so there will be lesser innovation and fewer games for you to choose from. Also, prices could be manipulated, and Microsoft could degrade the quality of games on rival consoles. These are the regulators' concerns, so they went to court. The case will be heard next week. This will be in a court in San Francisco, but this is not the only roadblock for Microsoft. Regulators across the world are divided about this deal. Those in the UK, in fact, are also against it. They moved before the American regulators. The UK blocked this buyout back in April. Microsoft has appealed against that decision too. The company's president slammed British regulators. His name is Bard Smith. This is what he said, and I'm quoting, "This decision, I have to say, is probably the darkest day in our 4 decades in Britain." But this scrutiny is not unexpected. Earlier, the European Union also opposed this takeover, but Microsoft was able to persuade Brussels to change its mind. The company made some promises. They promised to offer free licensing deals to all key gaming platforms, and this would allow other platforms, apart from Xbox, to also carry games made by Activision. So players will still have a choice. They won't be forced to buy an Xbox to play a certain game. That's what Microsoft promised. The Europeans relented, but others are still opposed to the acquisition. The legal battles could drag on for weeks. And without approvals, the takeover cannot happen. Regulators in the US and the UK need to sign off. But Microsoft is not without support. Regulators in nearly 40 countries have given a green signal to this deal. This includes major markets like China and Japan, but convincing Western watchdogs will be much harder. So will Microsoft be able to win this game? The outcome will impact gamers across the world. Now let's turn our attention to South Asia. A disaster is brewing in the Arabian Sea, Cyclone Bipart Joy. It's been categorized as a very severe cyclonic storm. It has, quote unquote, extensive damaging potential. In its crosshairs are the Indian state of Gujarat and the Pakistani state of Sindh. Both countries are taking measures to avert a catastrophe. Some casualties have already been reported. Red alerts have been issued. Our next report brings you updates from the ground.
These are visuals from Western India, the states of Maharashtra and Gujarat. Rough seas, turbulent waves, and unnaturally high tides. This is all due to an incoming storm, Cyclone Bipart Joy. It's a very severe cyclonic storm that's set to hit India. It's due to make landfall in the western state of Gujarat, near the Jakhau port on the Kutch Peninsula. This is the cyclone's expected path, predicted by India's meteorological department. As you can see, it's set to impact both India and Pakistan. When it hits, it has the potential to cause extensive damage. Wind speeds of up to 150 kilometers per hour could buffet the coast. So, both countries are making preparations. In India, officials say 45,000 people have been evacuated from Gujarat. Operations have been suspended in offshore oil rigs and major ports. Fishing has been stopped and people have been warned not to go near the sea.
Around 5 days ago, authorities told us not to come to the beach. We have come here to collect our things, and the waves have been strong for the past 5 days. We have been told not to come here, and tourists also come, but they're also being sent away.
There's a good reason to keep people away. Even though the cyclone hasn't made landfall, it has already claimed some lives. 4 people died in the city of Mumbai. This was on Monday. They were at one of the city's beaches and got swept away by the tide. 3 people died in Gujarat after strong winds led to trees getting uprooted and a wall collapsing. India is now trying to ensure there are no more casualties. Southern Pakistan too is bracing for impact.
We have shared data with the military and there are some 100,000 people who will be evacuated. This process will end by tomorrow evening or early morning on June 15.
The fishermen have been warned multiple times. Our Navy and Maritime Forces have removed the bigger ships from the sea. Right now, we don't have any release notice for aviation advice, but we will advise you about the situation between June 14th and June 16th.
That's Sherry Rahman, Pakistan's Minister for Climate Change. Yes, they have an entire ministry for that. India has the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Both countries need them because South Asia is in the eye of the storm. Literally in the case of Cyclone Bipart Joy, but also overall when it comes to climate change. The region is presently experiencing a heat wave. Last year, there were devastating floods in Pakistan. Those flooded areas are at risk from Cyclone Bipart Joy now.
Sadly, the affected areas of Keti, Bandar, Thata and Badin were also affected by last year's flood. These people are still struggling from it. Their homes are not yet reconstructed. Some people do have homes, but those are mud houses.
It's the usual story. The most vulnerable people suffer the most blameless bear the brunt of climate change. And events like Cyclone Bipart Joy are a result of climate change. This is only the third or fourth cyclone in about 60 years to hit this region. Its intensity has taken the region by surprise. That's why both India and Pakistan are on high alert. Scientists are concerned about changing weather patterns. They fear human activity could lead to these events becoming more frequent, bringing untold misery upon the vulnerable.
Getting married is like going to hell. Not my words. A Weibo user in China said this. Funny, right? But for China, this is no laughing matter because apparently this is a sentiment shared by many. Last year, China recorded its lowest number of marriages. They dropped to 6.83 million, the lowest since records began back in 1986. Now, China's marriage rate has declined rapidly over the past decade, but despite government push, the Chinese have remained stubborn and single. They don't want to get married. And this only feeds into an ongoing crisis in the country. Our next report tells you more about it.
This is Sun Jiangshu and Shi Si, a couple posing for photos ahead of their wedding. Notice how Shi Si nervously slides his arm around Sun, but not because he wants to, simply because he was asked to by the photographer. Because here's the catch. They are a fake couple, and their wedding, part of a performance orchestrated by an artist named Nut Brother. He brought the two strangers together, so they tie the knot, then divorce within 48 hours. Why? To stir up debate about the institution of marriage in modern-day China.
I think that a lot of people, especially women, can live a good life being single. As far as they are concerned, a family is just a burden they don't need at all. I think you need to think clearly about what you want before you get married and not about fulfilling other people's expectations.
This art performance was held in 2016. 7 years have passed since, but the sentiment remains the same. Millions in China are increasingly questioning marriage, and apparently they don't particularly love it. We aren't saying this, the numbers are. Last year, China recorded its lowest number of marriages. They dropped to 6.83 million, which is the lowest since records began in 1986. Now remember, China didn't always dislike marriage. In fact, they liked it enough to be quite creative with it. Look at these visuals from 2006. These are 50 Chinese couples getting married at an amusement park. Or take these Chinese couples. They're getting married during a mass ice wedding festival.
I think that our love for each other is like ice and snow. Pure, white and beautiful.
Quite dramatic, but also sweet. And for China, definitely better than not wanting to get married at all. The country's marriage rate peaked in 2013. Nearly 13.5 million couples wed. That's nearly double last year's count. also more than the entire population of some countries. But in the past decade, China's marriage rate has declined rapidly, and this only feeds into their ongoing demographic crisis. The population is aging. In the next decade, about 400 million people in China will be aged 60 and over. That's 30% of the population. And that's not all. China's birth rates are also falling. Last year, the population shrank for the first time in 6 decades. Warning bells are ringing in the government. They've held mass blind dating events and sought a reduction in bride price. That's the amount paid to a prospective bride's family. The government has also mandated a 30-day cool-off period before divorce. It's launching programs to encourage people to marry, but with limited success. Women in China are increasingly looking at marriage as something used to oppress them. They're demanding equality in child rearing and refuse to marry young. Between 2010 and 2020, the average age for women to get married for the first time increased from 24 to nearly 29. And with soaring unemployment rates in China, marriage is not an option for many young. So while the Chinese government continues to behave like a nosy distant relative, encouraging young people to get married, it just doesn't seem to be working. Maybe a helping hand could help China, or a matchmaking consultant, like the iconic Seema Taparia from Mumbai.
For our last story tonight, let's go back in history to the First World War. It lasted from 1914 to 1918. It involved a new kind of mechanized warfare where bodies were gassed, maimed, even burned. Combatants not only lost limbs, but also their faces. And those with ghastly facial injuries were often shunned in civilian life. But they also discovered a new armor, plastic surgery. Now doctors could fix shattered jaws and reconstruct broken noses. This was the first phase of plastic surgery, focused only on reconstruction, on medical situations. But in the decades since, it has come a long way. Many still use plastic surgery for medical life-saving reasons, but others do it to freshen up their looks. In today's world, plastic surgery's main goal is enhancement. And that's what we'll talk about tonight, the alteration of human body to achieve aesthetic goals. To get a little tuck in here and a little bounce there. Aesthetic surgery has been on the rise worldwide. It has risen by 33% over the last 4 years. Liposuction or fat removal surgery is the most common one. There are more than 1.9 million recorded procedures every year only for fat removal, 1.9 million annually. And this is worldwide data, but in some countries, the surgeries are more common than others. Topping the list is the United States, followed by Brazil. These two countries are estimated to have the most plastic surgeons, more than 30% of the world's total. The next 3 champions are Asian countries, China, Japan, and South Korea. So many clearly see real benefits in plastic surgery. And now this cohort has welcomed a new generation, Gen Z. These are people born between 1996 and 2010. Why are they attracted to plastic surgery? Because we live in a post-Kardashian world where beauty no longer lies in the eyes of the beholder. It lies in the likes, shares and comments on Instagram and TikTok. Look at this TikTok video. It shows a young woman on what she calls her rhinoplasty journey. Rhinoplasty is a surgical procedure that alters the appearance of the nose. And this video may seem odd, but there are millions like this one on social media. Together, they form a battalion of niche content. They're supported by a trending hashtag. They take the viewer on a cosmetic journey and they garner millions of views. In videos like these, the guide is a peppy young content creator and the motivation is to get an itty-bitty waist or sharper cheekbones or even a big pout, because the young don't need a genetic lottery to look appealing anymore. Now they can get any bodily aesthetic they want. So they're investing thousands of dollars to modify their bodies and booking cosmetic procedures in larger numbers than ever before. Reports say 75% of plastic surgeons in the US are seeing a spike in clients under 30. Worldwide, most breast augmentations and rhinoplasties take place in people aged 19 to 34. But the biggest shift, we say, is not in the numbers, it's in the mindsets. Back in the days, that surgeries used to be a hush-hush affair. Now they make for good content. So Gen Z is banging the digital drum and sharing their cosmetic surgery journeys online. Take Alex Earle, for example. 22 years old, she celebrated her surgery's one-year anniversary on TikTok. Or Audrey Peters, all of 25, she digitally documented her journey of getting chin fat removal. These women are not the exception, by the way, they are the norm. Now, plastic surgery is a personal choice, and we get that. And 20-somethings are being transparent about it, which we say is an excellent value, transparency. But these are also potentially dangerous procedures. Plastic surgeries are much more than easy, breezy, 30-second time-lapse videos. They can result in blindness, in blocked blood vessels, and even loss of skin and life in extreme cases. So we can't help but question the merits of these aesthetic aspirations. Who is influencing these influencers, and whose idea of beauty are they trying to conform to? Think about it. We'd like to hear from you. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with China. A strong gust of wind sent a huge canopy flying along with people holding onto it. Some people suffered fractured ribs. In the United States, an uninvited guest took a dip in a backyard swimming pool in Florida. Animal control had to be called in to show the guest out. And in Brazil, a digital exhibition is showing people the beauty of nature through mirrors. And finally, what makes the 14th of June significant? Taking you back in history, on this day in 1949, a monkey was sent to space for the first time. His name was Albert II. The spacecraft carrying the monkey flew till about 134 kilometers, but Albert died due to impact. Back then, countries used to send animals to space to assess their abilities to launch a living organism into space and bring it back alive. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, coming up. Keep them off the furniture. Okay, I've got them. I've got them. Yeah, luckily this nice swim out made it easier. My fletching.
2023 will be India's year. This year, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. This is China banning the exit of critics from the country. They're not allowed to leave China. Could NATO be coming to Asia? From all accounts, yes. The military alliance is opening its first liaison office in Japan. Beijing doesn't believe in multipolarity or division of powers. It's been quite a fascinating journey. But is the dream run coming to an end now? We ask because startups are going through hard times. There's been a wave of mass sackings. A good cartoon is like a stinging editorial, but sometimes the cartoon itself is a double standard. It's a crass attempt at peddling old and racist ideas about India. If you haven't heard of ChatGPT, you've been living under a rock. It can write your essays and emails, do your math worksheets, clear an MBA exam. The possibilities seem endless.